I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's EGGBURT, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
A carryover from the last break. By the way, we do the show live 7 to 8 o'clock every Monday through Friday morning. You can listen to it live on a stream. If you want to listen to the stream, you can just go to bjshow.co or egbert.com and then click on Egbert's nose on a little button right there, and it'll take you to the live feed. Or you can listen on 104.5, which is the old KSOQ. We now call it Egbert because he bought the radio station. Okay, carryover from last break. Okay. The Jimmy Carr interview, he said some very interesting things, and he tried to dispel the toxic masculinity thing. Okay, you with me, John?
I am, yeah.
Okay. He said that, and I'm gonna meld two different philosophies into one Brad philosophy. Jimmy Carr talked about that the toxic masculinity, that as a man does not have to be a tough guy. That's where a lot of people sort of see this toxic masculinity. And the point that Tom Grisham makes, and once again, this guy runs a talk show called Gun Talk. They talk about guns, they talk about self-defense. But Tom preaches all the time, if you're a concealed carry holder, the absolute positive last thing you ever want to do is pull your weapon. And he talks about the fact, and all the time, you're in a store and you brush by somebody, and the guy turns around and says, "Hey, buddy, you bumped into me." You don't say, "Hey, dude, I did not, and if you don't believe me, we'll go settle in the parking lot." You say, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I came around the corner. I didn't see you. It is my fault. My apologies. Can we just let it go?" And if the guy gets a little bit more agitated, you try even harder. "Look, you know what? I'm really sorry. I didn't see you. I came around the corner. I didn't hit you. You know what? See, look at my glasses. I don't have the best eyes. I'm really sorry." Okay? Now, some people would say that's being a wimp. But taking the Jimmy Carr philosophy and the Tom Grisham philosophy and putting them together, that is a real man. A real man is a guy who's not going to, show that he's, got big biceps and he's going to punch somebody else out, or say on a Facebook page that he's going to punch somebody out, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway,
I do, yeah. I get the reference,
but
Brad.
The point being that this whole crazy thing of toxic masculinity, Jimmy Carr talks about this exact thing. And it's interesting. He made an interesting comment. He said, in a generation gone by, a man learned how to shave from his father. He says, now the kids learn how to shave from YouTube. And he goes on to explain that the generational hand-me-down of what it's like to be a man has sort of disappeared because the men aren't essentially doing the things that their fathers did because of the fact that there's technology and there's internet and stuff like that. But more importantly, the men, the fathers of today's generation, are confused as to what they should be as a man. And I thought to myself,
absolutely, Brad, you're exactly right.
And I thought to myself, God, this is so interesting. And he goes into depth on this, which I thought was actually fascinating. And once again, but here's the thing: if you can find Jimmy Carr's comedy routines on YouTube, okay, warning, they are X-rated. He is, the F-bomb comes out of his mouth all the time, but he is so incredibly sharp. He's amazing at how quick his mind works. And once again, if you know comedy, most comedians have a set where they've done this a gazillion times. It's sort of like Kamala Harris and her speeches. It's the same speech every time, same speech. And once again, comedians, the same thing. If you go to their show in Las Vegas, whatever, if you went to the matinee show, it's pretty much the same as the 10 o'clock show or the late night show. It's the same thing. And even to the point where some comedians will talk about when they first started out, they were told, okay, get on stage and give me a tight 10. So in other words, they wanted all blockbuster, 10 minutes worth of blockbuster stuff, okay, that kind of stuff. They just keep doing the same stuff. But both Jimmy Carr and Matt Rife, they totally riff on the audience. And it's so good because of the fact that you just see how incredibly quick their minds are, where there's no script. They're just flying blind. They're just literally, trapeze. They're doing like, John, we haven't used this term in a long time. They're monkey branching, but they're not monkey branching because instead of having one hand on the limb and then not letting go of that hand until the other hand hits a limb, they're just literally, swinging from one limb and in the air, and hopefully when they get close to that other tree, they can grab that branch and then swing to another tree and hopefully, free falling. They could fall at any minute, but they don't.
Let's steal a phrase from a Democrat, Brad. In his book, All Too Human, he was talking about he, of course, the pronoun there being George Stephanopoulos. In his book, he was talking about Bill Clinton's propensity to go out and famously delivered his first State of the Union speech with a broken teleprompter and without notes more than an hour ahead of time. And they called that, colloquially, bungee jumping without a net.
Well, it's interesting. It's sort of interesting. Okay, second thing. The reason you did not hear anything about Megyn Kelly when she was doing her shtick, was that Thursday night in Kansas City? Last Thursday?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly.
You haven't heard this, have you?
No, go ahead. Let's get to it.
Oh, my God. She goes on a rant against transgenderism. That's why.
Yeah, that was the whole Taylor Swift. We talked about that yesterday, Brad.
Well, that's why. But have you actually heard it?
No, I didn't watch the whole thing, and I have a link up to it yesterday. Oh. She uses the example of Tim Walz. Well, you tell the story, Brad.
Well, it's just she just once again, Megyn Kelly, brilliant woman. She's an attorney too, isn't she? Isn't she an attorney? I'm pretty sure.
I don't know if she's an attorney or not.
I have to look that up. Okay. I mean, she's one of these people that you don't want to get in a verbal skirmish with. There's certain people like Tucker Carlson's like that. You don't want to get into a discussion where, well, you know what, dude, I'm going to show you how wrong you are, because he will slice and dice you. There's certain people in this world that you just don't want to mess with. And I thought it was interesting because I heard it. I can't remember. Like I said, I'm in the car. I punch buttons. Isn't that terrible? I don't want. I might have been listening to. Brian Kilmeade on 97.1, and he played a big segment of it, and oh my God, she just torched the transgender movement. And I'm thinking to myself, well, it's funny why we talked about that this morning, where John said that none of the Kansas City media covered it.
And she said F Taylor Swift. That was the other headline grabber there.
Right. And the interesting part of it was that she was, once again, I get why she wasn't covered by the media in Kansas City, because they didn't want to promote that, right?
Yeah. I think it has more to do with the fact that you have a bunch of conservatives getting together. You have a media personality who is critical of the mainstream media. If you're woke KSHB in Kansas City or any of the other TV stations, you're not going to give any oxygen to a conservative.
Okay. Two more things. Maybe we'll get to two more, but for sure one more. Remember, we asked the question, why are there so many Haitians in Springfield, Ohio?
Yeah, and I was wrong. I looked it up. I thought it was because they all came in on the Rawlings truck, but apparently that's not true.
A listener, thank you very much, sent me an interesting story of telling the story of why there are lots of Haitians in Springfield. Springfield, Ohio used to be a big manufacturing town, and I think they used to make some kind of farm implements or something like that, and that went away. Probably went to China, okay? And so there were a lot of manufacturing capabilities in Springfield. They had the infrastructure, so other companies came in and tried to manufacture things. But apparently the big manufacturing in Springfield now is food processing. So somehow or another, this got around that they were looking for workers, and somehow or another someone said, well, there's a group of Haitian refugees which would love to work in a food factory, and can we bring some of them in? And it worked, and more of them came in, and more of them came in, and more of them came in, and they got jobs in the plants, which at that point in time had been shuttered, and now they're back in business. And they came in, and they interviewed one of the guys who is employing several Haitians, and he bragged about the fact how they're extremely hard workers, they do their job very well, they don't complain, and they're much easier to supervise than Americans. Now, I will tell you my story. I know a guy who shall remain nameless in the St. Louis area who runs a landscaping firm. And he does, typical stuff, plants and stuff like that. But he also has a couple crews that cut grass and, string trimmer, that kind of stuff, the whole bit. He will tell me that, and one time in a meeting, he got up and talked about this, that his U.S. citizen people, they got, if they're cutting grass, every half an hour they have to take a smoke break, and every 45 minutes they got to call their girlfriend, and every hour they have to go to the bathroom, and then repeat the same thing. The next hour they got to take a smoke break for 10 minutes.
The Haitians.
Well, in his case, they were Mexicans that were on his crew, and he says the Mexicans, you said, the truck would stop, the guys would get the equipment off the lawn, and they would go to work immediately, work like, busy beavers, not take a break, not take a smoke break, not take a call my girlfriend break, do their job, get back on the truck, and once again, repeat that procedure all day long and never complain. Where the guys would go, oh my God, the U.S. guys, the American guys, the locals would go, oh my God, it's so hot today. Boy, I'd much rather be at home watching TV or be at my girlfriend's place. She's got a pool in her apartment complex. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And once again, it's the thing that, just like the other thing we play here, where we run the Gary V thing, where he talks about.
I was just going to say, Brad, it's been 8 days and you haven't talked about it. I was going to tee you up with that.
He talks about that we are a latter day, whatever you want to call it, latter day Roman Empire, where once upon a time the Roman Empire was this incredible civilization and governmental system and the whole bit, and everybody got fat and sassy, and everybody got, I don't want to work, I don't want to go to work, I just want to stay home, and things just fell the hell apart, okay? Once again, I say if we're not there, we're real close to being right there, because look at what, and to a certain extent on both sides now, look at what our presidential candidates are telling us. Hey, I'll give you free stuff. Hey, Trump, hey, you people working for tips, no taxes on tips. Now he's come out, no overtime, no taxes on overtime. And Kamala's saying, hey, you people that have never bought a house, I'm going to give you $25,000. Once again, you're making it to the point where people don't have to work anymore. The government just takes care of them. And then what happens was, it's sort of like I get fascinated by this. You read these stories of these first-generation immigrants who come over here and work their butts off. In some various, cultures, they end up being in certain businesses. Like the running joke. Remember when Biden even said, when he was vice president, you can't go, you have to be able to speak Arabic to go to a 7-Eleven. Remember he talked about that?
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Because for whatever reason, and it's true, I go to a 7-Eleven near one spot where I'm at from time to time, and there's Arabic guys in there running, they own a 7-Eleven. Okay? So once again, the first generation comes over and they work their butts off. And most of them become very successful and they got money. Then their kids become lazy butts because of the fact that, I don't want to work like my dad and mom. I saw my mom and dad put those, 12, 14, 16-hour days in and work their fingers to a bone. That's not for me. And they can get away with it because they got money from their mom and dad who made their money by working hard. Okay? Once again, it's like the crazy thing. It's generational thing. There are certain things that my mom and dad did that I won't do just because my mom and dad did it. I've told the story before. My mom and dad drove Buicks all the time. If you said, hey, Brad, there's a new Buick for you out in the parking lot, I would say, is the title there in the front seat? Yeah, Brad, it's there right there. I would go out in the parking lot, I would jump on that Buick, and I would go to a car dealer and say, okay, it's a brand new Buick. It's only got 32 miles on it. I just drove it here from my office. What do you give me for a trade-in? I'd trade it on something just so I wouldn't be driving a Buick. Get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Hey, this is, and I think that's probably pretty common boomer logic, probably some pretty common Generation X logic. You don't want to fall into the same patterns that your parents do.
Yeah. Okay. And as opposed to my mother, see, that's where the generational thing. My mother hated radio, and I work in it. So how much of a in your face is that to my mom, right?
Well, that doesn't mean that you don't hate radio, Brad.
I love radio.
Someone told me last night that radio is not dead. I met up with a favorite group of people, Brad. We talked about our friend Brad Hildebrand. He is not their friend because these folks don't know you, but they're listeners to our show. They're civilians. They're not people that are involved in politics. In fact, I was talking about the fact that I was admitting, actually, Brad, that I was, and I want to talk about this on the air. I'll say it right now. I was a bit of a Richard to Brad yesterday. You know how Richard Nixon had a nickname. And Brad, and so I should apologize to you because I was a little bit of a jerk yesterday, Brad, and I apologize for that. But we were talking about radio, and my friends were talking about the fact that radio is not dead, and they happen to be women in their 30s and 40s, and one woman in her 50s. And they were talking about the fact that they listen to our show, obviously, but they listen to radio, and they were talking about the fact that radio is not dead, Brad.
John mentioned Dick Nixon's nickname, and a lot of people don't know this, but his nickname was Consuela. That was his nickname. So,
which is also, Brad, you know what you call a 4-foot-tall Mexican woman?
What's that? Do I want
Consuelo.
Okay. We have to take a break. Thank God.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?